When I was little, my dad and I logged hours wrestling on the living room floor. It wouldn't be until in my later years that I realized that was probably the only way he knew how to express intimacy. As I grew, our wrestling became more verbal over sports like baseball and football. Schoolwork, the future, responsibility, work ethics. They were interesting matches, usually ending in a draw. But when he died of cancer just short of my 13th birthday, my wrestling with him ended. And I took up my cause with God. We logged many, many, many hours in the back fields, I doing the yelling and screaming and God doing the listening, but no answers to my myriad of questions. I guess that's probably why the story of Jacob wrestling with God has always been one of my favorites. In fact, when I was writing a column for the Synod newsletter, I entitled it Wrestling with Jacob. It has been my relationship with God, as it was Jacob's. And I always found in Jacob a ray of hope for me, because here was a dirty, rotten scoundrel by every indication of his behavior, and yet God continued to use him as a blessing. We find Jacob in this particular scene on the edge of home. He had been on the lam as an exile for years, but now came home well-to-do, a powerful person, but still scared out of his wits because he didn't know how his twin brother would receive him. That's always a scary thought. How will family regard the disenfranchised? And so he sends his flocks and his herds and his many servants and his family across, kind of to soften things up, and remains this side of the river Jabbok. And he goes to sleep. His sleep is interrupted shortly by a stranger, perhaps an angel. I kind of get the idea it was God. And they wrestle all night with no one gaining the advantage. Despite Jacob's pleas, it goes on until daybreak, when Jacob finally wrestles out of God a blessing. And as that God with a sense of humor always does, God left him with a sign of that blessing, a bit of a dislocated hip and a perpetual limp, a mark. That image of wrestling with God, I think, is a helpful image, because it, like my father, is a sign of intimacy, a holding each other so close, so tightly, that neither can run away. It is, for me, the journey of faith. to hold tight to God in the midst of all the craziness of my life, praying to God that there is blessing in the midst of the darkness. As I look at the world around me today, I think one of the things that we have failed to do, particularly as church, is to engage in wrestling. We much more prefer to wrestle like the professional wrestling, WWE, to stand at opposite ends of the ring and scream at each other nonsense, invectives, ugly words, taunts, jeers. And when the wheels of justice turn or seem to be blind, we smash each other with chairs. It's no wonder we don't get anywhere. There's no intimacy in that. There is no serious wrestling. What if we truly engage one another in wrestling with the tough and thorny issues of politics and economics and faith and social behavior? What if we didn't let go until we found a blessing? Some of my dearest friends have become those I wrestle most with. And I found that's not a bad thing, even if some days I exit with a bit of a limp. Thank you for joining me.